Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We are on top of the league, looking down on the Rangers, but for how much longer? The only reason I can think of is the form we have found since Brendan has been around. And Meehall is back on the Flagship podcast to discuss everything that is going on at the moment, because since we were on last week, Meehall, it has been a hurricane of drama on the pitch, off the pitch, and on the league table. Hail, hail, Meehall, and how you doing, mate?
I'm all right. It's very late at night here in Australia, so I'm excited to. I've been waiting for this all day. I've written some mad stuff all day, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you because I have to say, when Celtic lose, I can't really deal with it very well. I sort of pretend it didn't happen for a couple of days, so I'm happy to have got that out of my system. You know, I've wallowed as much as I'm going to wallow, and now I'm happy to talk about Celtic again without feeling too depressed.
That's it. And I think like we all go through that kind of emotion cycle after those results. We've had a few of them this year that have went right against the run of play and right against the form and right against expectation. And it really does knock you for 10. But we're quickly, having to sober up to the loss that we had last week and just have to, wipe your chin off and move on to the next one. Livingston we've got, and this festive period obviously kind of culminates with the Derby game towards the end of the year. So all eyes are on the squad, who Rodgers is picking now, especially because throughout this season, we've heard the manager constantly talk about the need for quality, a bit more experience, pace, power, these kind of key buzzwords. And the Celtic team has not had any, if not much of that over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
No, I mean, even Callum McGregor basically came out this week and said, when I was just getting back into it today, I thought, I better wade back in. And I thought the first thing I saw was Callum McGregor basically saying that the rest of his teammates are shite. So, and not in as many words, but sort of saying the team isn't as good as it was last year, which I think is true. And yeah, so it got me thinking a little bit on why that might be, because I think everybody has reacted to the summer transfer window as being bad, which it definitely was, in the sense that we came out of it with a worse team than we went in. But then I was sort of thinking, why is it bad? Because it's not that we don't sign players; we sign far too many players, and what are we constrained by that is making it bad? Because I feel like a lot of the things that we did, Ange, well, and I don't know that it was because of Ange, other than the fact that he knew lots of Japanese players who were good, but the wider, other than them all coming from Japan, the wider thing was kind of has changed a little bit in a way that I don't think is good. So I sort of did a little analysis, right? So there's two bits to it. One was to do with the Champions League in terms of like who we could expect to sign given the rules, and the other bit was a little bit to do with what we have and what we could potentially do with it. And there's a couple of thoughts that I've had. I feel like when I was sort of thinking of it to myself, I'll come across as a massive apologist for the board, but it's more of like trying to work out the conditions that they're in, because it's very easy for us to sit here and go like, okay, we'd love us to sign all the best players and retain all our best players, but it's not as easy as that. And the job you would hope of obviously we don't have a sporting director, but imagine if we did. If we had someone whose job it was to think across a 5-year term rather than a 6-month term, this is probably what they would be thinking of. So it's not so much this is what the board does or this is what Brendan Rodgers should do. It's more like if somebody was in between, like most clubs now have, but inexplicably we don't have, this is what I think they would be thinking of. That was my logic, because I just bought a new football manager, right? So this has been front and center in my mind, because they've got a new feature in it where you can do a squad planner across like multiple years. They never had that before. So I've been having a little play around with it, not on Football Manager in this case, on a thing on my screen up here. But inspired by that was what made me think about actually doing it, was sort of like, this is what they would have, right? So do you want to start with my Champions League pop quiz?
Oh, I'd love to.
There's a question for you. So obviously in the Champions League squad, you have to have the maximum you can have is 17 foreign players, right? And then you've got to have 8 players who are either home trained or club trained. We had 8, which is more than you can say for other teams. But the team in our group had the most club trained players, as in players who played in the Champions League who came through their own system. Between us, Feyenoord, Atletico, and Lazio, who had the most?
I'm going to say Atletico.
No. Guess again.
It would have to be Feyenoord then.
Guess again.
No way. Can't be Lazio. For sure. Or us. Us. Was it us?
But it's us.
I didn't think we could have been the answer, sorry. Okay, well, there you go.
That's a good way of getting out of it. No, we had Callum McGregor, Forrest, Welsh, Mitchell Frame, and I put Andy Wilson, though he never actually got on, but he's over 22, which is the cutoff. I guess Mitchell Frame doesn't count because he's under it. Plus, we had obviously Taylor, Turnbull, and Scott Bain, who were all from Killy, Motherwell, Dundee, respectively. Feyenoord had 4 for a club that you think has lots of players. Atletico had 4, one of which was Morata, who I'd forgotten begun and then left. So he isn't he's not like our players who've been all the way through. He's been and gone away. I think Saul Niguez maybe also went away. Riquelme and Barrios. I have to say he apparently played against us, but I don't remember him at all. Lazio had 1, Cataldi. But so this is my point. I briefly brought this up last week, right? And I said if I had time to do the research, I would go and do it. And basically, because Scotland is 5.4 million people, which is, I've actually written this down, a fifth of the population of the Netherlands, a 10th of the population of Spain, and a 12th of the population of Italy, we only have 3 players who are actually from other clubs in Scotland because there just aren't as many people in Scotland. So if you're Lazio, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players you've signed from who are Italians who you've signed from other clubs in Italy, which we just can't do that. We couldn't if we wanted to. Then you've got Feyenoord. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 from other clubs in the Netherlands, and Atletico have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 who are from Spain, which does include Griezmann because he counts as Real Sociedad. The point being, when we look at our Champions League squad and go, "Oh God, the quality's not there," blah blah blah, we are incredibly hamstrung by who we could actually pick if we wanted to. For example, if we went and got one of the best players on the Scotland team, Scott McTominay, we couldn't pick him because he's raised in England. So we have Mikey Johnson, for example, who plays for Ireland but counts as one of our players. And obviously, you have players like Griezmann at Atletico, who plays for France, but is counted as Spanish as far as this is concerned. So even I think Che Adams is there as well. Like this, Lyndon Dykes. Like there's a lot of players who play for the national team who we couldn't even sign if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, so there's only 2 teams that really are near our level, which is us and Rangers, who will never sign a player of. And then it's like we're basically picking out of the English second division, like in terms of the standard of player who comes through Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, etc. And this is a huge deal. Like, and I feel like I listen to more Celtic content than most people, I'd imagine, and it just doesn't get talked about. Of like the very small talent pool. And one of the main things that comes up is, oh, we don't bring through our own players. It's like, well, actually, like compared to the people that we have to play against, we actually do. The question of why don't we bring through better players is an entirely different one. But when we did bring through better players like Kieran Tierney or Ben Doak, for example, like they're not going to be good enough. They're going to be too good to stay with us. And we are stuck in a bind. And I feel like that's something that has been kind of passed over a little bit in trying to judge who we sign. Because to move on to my second point, I have a full list here. Actually, it's not. I'm trying not to read it as a script, but I did. You know, I've got a lot of time on my hands at work at the moment. My boss isn't going to listen to this. So we get. I'm a sports journalist. Maybe I can turn into content for that.
So Jason,
I have to make it about. Yeah, I have to make it about rugby. If Andrew was still our manager, I reckon I could have turned this into content. The odds are stacked against Andrew. So we're allowed 17 foreign players. We have 22 foreign players, right, at the moment, of our squad, which is, massively
36.
Yeah. Yeah, I got it between 31 and 36, depending on who you counted. But yeah, it's a lot. So 22 have made an appearance so far in like this season. So that doesn't include Kobayashi, Kwon, and Benji Siegrist, who are haven't actually got on the field in a competitive game. Obviously, it's a lot of players. So that's 20, 22, 25, including guys who haven't actually got on. But that doesn't include McCarthy, who counts as a foreign player, but he's from Glasgow. So I've counted 33 players here, right? So of that, you look at how you build a squad. So we can only have 17. We basically got 8 foreign players too many, but we also we're completely limited by the non-foreign players that we can pick, which is a problem. So, and it's basically, as far as I can see, the only way you can get around it, which is kind of one of the takeaways I've got at the end, but spoiler, is to just we have to spend more money on foreign players, as in more per player than we currently spend. For reasons, there's another reason for it we'll get to in a minute. So of our 33, 17 of them are under 25, which is a big, yeah, you go, look at that. Which is a huge proportion of them. It's the second lowest average age in the SPFL, but actually, given that Aberdeen are below us, we're 25.2 is the average age. Aberdeen, I think, is 24.8. It's just under 24. But of our oldest players, you've got Siegrist, McCarthy. You've got all these guys who never play, whereas all the oldest players on Aberdeen's team play every week. Johnny Hayes, Graham Shinney. So if you actually look at who gets on the field, of an average per minute, blah blah blah, we are by far the youngest team in the league, way younger than everybody else. So we've got something wrong here, because we used to sign under Ange. We signed guys like Hatate, Maida, Kyogo, guys, Aramoy, guys who could go straight to the team on an age profile level. And we've basically stopped doing that and only signed very young players who can't go into the team. When the kind of the opposite, which is kind of the opposite of what we need to do, because we know we can only carry so many foreign players. So we should be prioritizing. If you're going to play 20-year-olds, they have to be Scottish. It doesn't make any sense to play a 20-year-old Norwegian unless they think Oldenholm is the best player. So Leo Labada, for example, played for us when he was 20, but he'd already played, I've actually counted this, he's now played 192 first-team games. So he's not, whilst his age would tell you he's 21, or 22, I think he is now, actually, on a practical level, that isn't actually true. He's played way more football compared to Stephen Welsh, who's 24 and has played 54 games in his career. So he's played 4 times as many games as Stephen Welsh in a much less amount of time. So if you look at who's missing from our team, and this is sort of where it gets to what's going wrong in the last month or so, the guys who are missing are the key players in the age range. So if you look at Maida, Hatate, Naroki, and again, Abada, who's his game, I've called it game age, which isn't a phrase I've invented, but if you understand what I mean, in terms of how many games he has played in terms of experience, he's a much older player than 21, because he started so young and he played in the Israeli league. So I've taken appearances to be the top tier you could have played at in terms of men's football. So internationals, cup game. So if you play for Premier League 2, Matt O'Reilly played a load of games in Premier League 2, for example, doesn't count. Abada played one reserve game and immediately went to the first team and basically has never left. So we have this problem that a lot of the experienced players who are good at problem solving their way out of situations are not currently playing. And the guys that we have got in the team, even someone like Palmer, has not played 100 senior games. He's 23. I found it 2 days older than Stephen Welsh. But there you go. But he's not played that many games. Stephen Welsh, not played that many games. Oldenholm has played 90 and he's 20, for example. And so I know this because in my day job in the world of rugby league, you don't count in terms of people's age, because people physically mature at different levels. You count them in terms of games. Someone who's played 50 NRL games or 75 NRL games, you can go, okay, this is this level of experienced player, because that takes about 3 seasons to do. You play 20, 25 games a season. So obviously rugby league, different sport, blah blah blah. But because of the physical aspects, they count them in games. They don't count them in. You don't say, oh,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
23 because a 23-year-old who's played 3 seasons is 75 games in, and 23-year-old might well have not made their debut because they were a late bloomer. Because if you play as a a forward where you have to make loads of tackles and run into people, then you need to be bigger than if you play as a different position where you might get in the team younger. So it's kind of pointless to compare them by age.
Yeah, yeah. I get that.
So I sort of did this for the Celtic team, right? Because if you look at who there's 2 points, right? I'm trying to make it. One is that our team is very inexperienced, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. Kind of we can get to that. But the players that we have, like we do have some very experienced young players, like guys who've played a lot of games for their age. So I've got O's got 140 games, a lot of subs, obviously since he came here, but still 140 games. Lagerbielke 121. Marco Tilio's got 90, and that's in the A League. Where the A League you only played the season's only 2/3 the length of the. You have a 5 month
It's a
off
short.
season in the A League because
Yeah, it's a short season, isn't
it's
it?
a ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, which because they want to play as many games as the other sports in Australia, even though you could play twice as many soccer games. If you ever play Football Manager as the A League, you're like, fuck, there's a lot of games in the Championship compared to compared to the A League. It's very boring. You get season finishes, well, there's no more games for 5 months. So like we have these players. So Mikey Johnson, 20 games across 5 years, or Andy Wilson, 154 again across an even longer period. So the Scottish guys that we have, we could have worked out that they were either going to be good enough or not good enough way earlier in their career if they'd have played more games. And we don't use, so we should have had, Welsh played, I think, 18 games for Morton. Why isn't he been playing for Hibs or somebody else? It's like we should have been saying, okay, we need to know if these guys can make it. We need to put them at another Scottish club to make sure that they're playing in the league that we need them to play in to work out whether they're going to be good enough. Because essentially, when we sign Abada, he has already got that experience playing in the Israeli league, or Holm has got it from playing in the Norwegian league. And we've basically gone, okay, our own players who we actually do need to play when they're young, we don't ever play them. So I think the most games that Stephen Welsh has played, he averages about 10 games a season in men's football. Like, how is he ever going to get better if he doesn't play any games? Unless we've got the most elite training possible. Like, you can't tell me that he wouldn't have done better playing 40 games in the season for Hibs or
Yeah.
Dundee or somebody than
Like
playing
Scales did when he
10
went to
games a season.
Aberdeen.
And now, yeah, well, I know you love Liam Scales and I don't, but that is a perfect example. I wish I'd counted how many games Liam Scales has played because he played League of Ireland, he's played for Aberdeen. He has
I'll check
not
it.
sat on the bench. There you go. How many career games has Liam Scales played? Because I reckon it'll be more than 54. Like, he's a bit older than I thought he was. I think he's 25. But
Wow, by the way, in League of
um,
Ireland, Shamrock Rovers over 2 seasons, that will be 38 games. But prior to that, UC Dublin, Premier Division 30. So that would take us to like just under 60. But then it's a division below that. He played UC Dublin for 3 seasons, which is amounting to 63 appearances. His total career appearances now spans 185 games after 31 with Aberdeen. And now he's up to a total of, this isn't only in the league, not including any cups for Aberdeen or Celtic, but he's now up to 21 league appearances for Celtic. Obviously, the Champions League, Europa League is in there, Scottish Cup and League Cup for Celtic and Aberdeen, as well as the Irish clubs. But yeah, like a guy that by the time we've signed him, I know it's not top tier for all of that, but a guy that's pushing on 100 appearances at, that level,
a,
so
a
good
level that
numbers.
is good enough to play. If you're one of the better teams in that league, you would suggest that a better player in that league could play in the SPL. Like,
Yeah.
maybe not for Celtic, but they could play in the SPL. So
Yeah.
players that we bring through our own system do not get the same experience as every player that we sign in, which is upside down because, and if you look at our youth team now, guys like Rocco Bata or, Mitchell Frame, whatever, are now going to have the same problem where we're going to go, you get to play in the Lowland League, or you get to play for Celtic, and you don't get to play anything in between, which means that you are basically playing in front of nobody. And there's another thing which gets talked about a lot over here, and I have to say I've never heard anybody speak about it in Scotland. And you're the coach, not me. So if you hear people talk about this in the youth system, do tell me. If you ask any coach in the NRL here who has young players, guys who are sort of 20, early 20s, one of the first things they'll mention is that they didn't play any football. They always call it football here. It means rugby league for 18 months. So there's a guy who plays the halfback for South Sydney Rabbits, which is the biggest, most supported team in Sydney, and in what is theoretically the most important position. And he's played for them for about 2 seasons. But when he came into the team, he hadn't played any football for 2 years because of COVID. So he went from being the best player in the sort of under 19s, under 20s team, 2 years of nothing, and then straight into the first team. And every week the coach would say, you have to remember this guy hasn't played any football because all of the junior leagues were cancelled because of COVID, which happened to us as well. So if you're,
Yeah,
I don't know, Rocco Batter, for example, he's 19. So between the ages of 15 and 17, he'd have played almost no games, like no training, no nothing. And obviously, it doesn't matter that much because everybody had the same problem. But in terms of developing a pathway, like you think of when players have come to us at a young age, like Christopher Ayer came at 17, played
yeah.
a bit for us. We went, go and play for Kilmarnock. He played a load against Kilmarnock, came back, was the best player on Kilmarnock's team, then goes into our team. All these guys never got the chance to do that. So we could have had 2 years in which we looked at Rocco Batter and went, this guy's clearly going to be good enough to play for the first team at some point. So let's not mess around with him playing 5th division football. Let's get him straight to Queen of the South, straight to, Airdrie, whatever, and get him playing against blokes and in front of a crowd, because every young person you speak to will tell you that the hardest thing, I mean, obviously, when you're getting physically clattered by blokes playing rugby league, it's a little bit different, but basically, the hard thing is playing against blokes and then actually having someone care if you're good or shit. Like, if you've played badly, but if you're playing in front of mums and dads, like it's different to having even 1,000 people who are emotionally
Fans.
invested in whether you win or not. Like, if you play badly in the reserves, you play brilliantly in the reserves, it ultimately doesn't matter. Like, no one
Yeah,
gives a
no one
crap who won
cares.
the reserves. So just the fact that you're playing, like, this is kind of what the logic of the Lowland League was, right? But the level is so far down. Like, if you're playing against civil service strollers or, I can't remember who's in that league, bad teams, Edinburgh City, but I think they got promoted anyway. But, the bad teams, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. Whereas even if you're playing in the second division in Scotland, in the championship, people who go to watch Airdrie care if they win? Or like
Yeah.
a Broke through a Hallow or Brecon, whoever. Brecon, not Brecon. And we basically, when we sign players, we use that logic to be like, look how well Abada did. He's played so many games by this age, and yet when we do it with our own players, we do nothing of the sort. So this is So the composition of the squad in this age thing, in terms of the number of games in it that we are currently fielding, guys like Stephen Welsh and Yang, Quan, like these dudes, they are young and inexperienced, which is not you can be young and not inexperienced. And indeed you can be old, as Stephen Welsh is, and also inexperienced. Like we think that we're a different club to everybody else, and we really just aren't. Like this is not how it works.
There's some things in that sense that are completely immovable, and this kind of lack of, experience that, you're kind of highlighting, the manager's kind of referenced as well, maybe in the more kind of superficial sense of like somebody who's 27, someone who is a bit more of a guy in the peak of their powers rather than a prospect. I think that's Rogers' main gripe he tries to share with us. But I do feel that in terms of the domestic element that comes into a lot of this, there is a lot of backseat driving from Celtic in that respect. Like we've seen the amount of attention that Stephen Welsh had when Ange was giving him minutes. Like we could have maybe sold him to, I think, Toulouse and Udinese were interested in him for a minute or two.
Yeah, Udinese,
And
yeah.
and I think the prevailing reason around keeping him was he's homegrown. Like, this is a guy we might actually need in a couple of years. But to keep him idle for 8 to 9 games, let's see, especially now, we know we're not in Europe past Christmas. So there's no need to have like 8 centre backs. We know that already. Kobayashi is going to go to Japan probably. But somebody like Welsh should be sent to Aberdeen, should be sent to Hibs and get the rest of the season out playing for them again, a la Scales. For me, because like you say, like we can't develop guys completely on the training pitch in reserves in B team situations. And if you look at some of our contemporaries, like Feyenoord, for example, the way the Dutch system works is they get like their B team can actually fully enter the division, but they can never gain promotion. So if you look at the level below the Eredivisie, I think it's called the Jupiter League or something like that. I know Belgium's called something like that as well, but or maybe Easterly Division. It doesn't matter what it's called, right? But in that division,
Eerste, Tweede, Derde. There you go. Former Netherlands resident.
Oh, there you
It
go.
just literally means first, second, third.
Oh, of course, yeah. So you'll know firsthand. In that division is young Ajax, young Feyenoord, young AZ,
Yeah.
young PSV. Sometimes they'll get relegated to tier 3, but they're mainly in that tier 2. And like, I mean, tier 2 football isn't exactly the same as loaning them around your division or whatever. But for the ones that aren't ready to get that loan around the top tier division, having access into the tier below and be able to get the Mitchell Frames, the Rocco Vatas, like we've seen, we used that Liam Scales example earlier. You could probably use Norway in the same kind of breadth also with the Ayer and the home example. But even at Scottish Championship level, if you could get a guy from 17 to 20, get close to 100 appearances, then if and when you call upon him, like you say, it's a much more known quantity, and it kind of helps that whole element of the where we kind of started with this, the genesis of it, that Champions League composition, and the part that's kind of hamstrung us so far, is that we are having to fill up our roster with a lot of players by default on, their eligibility in the competition and their status of where they were born and where they were trained and all that. But they don't get in the team on any other merit. They're not actually good enough. They're not actually a worthwhile contributor if we needed to play someone in goals for the Champions League. Who thinks Scott Bain is a worthy, candidate to do that on a 4-year contract at the moment? So it's not the merit of being a good enough player. It's more the merit of their bloody birth certificate at this point, and that is a real, like you said earlier, it's a handicap. It hamstrings you.
Yeah, and if you look at like I used to go and watch the top amateur level in the Netherlands. So Amsterdamse FC, which was the closest football team to my house. They actually had, what was he called? Kenny Talisa. He used to play for Dundee United. Him and his
Okay.
twin brother, they were identical twins. It's completely pointless. But if anyone who remembers this guy, he's a little afro. He played for Dundee. Pretty sure it's Dundee United. He, him and his brother used to play, and they would play as basically two number 10s. Neither of them ran, and they only ever passed to each other. And they were the best two players in every field, but they just
Brilliant.
basically were so unfit that they were just like, we can basically just play at this level, and like we'll have a nice time, and why try any harder? It's like if you go and watch the Northern Irish Premier League, you'd be like, almost everybody in this league could play in England, but why would they? Like, they've just got better shit to do, and they don't want to go and live in Peterborough.
Yeah.
But
Fair enough.
so I also used to live in Germany, right? And so having watched fourth division German football and third division, actually, the team I watched, Babelsberg, got relegated from the third to the
Oh,
fourth.
Babelsberg.
And
Yeah.
yeah. Also, Dundee United former striker Anders Schava once scored at Rangers. He played for us. But as did the Twadzik, they used to play against us all the time. The Twadziks, do you remember them?
Yeah. I remember both of them. Yeah.
They bounced around several clubs. This is the wonders of being in the Berlin Celtic Supporters Club. We all used to go down and watch Babelsberg. But you would play against Hertha Berlin's second team. I remember playing. There was a guy called John Brooks who scored in the World Cup for America.
Yeah. The American guy. Yeah.
American guy, centre back, and he was playing against Babelsberg because they were like, "You need to go and play against blokes for a bit because you're getting bullied around." And it was so funny. It was like watching a kid in. If you put me into the under 10s, and it's like he doesn't play a position anymore. He just plays. He's just so much better than everybody. He plays every position, and it was a little bit like that, but he didn't last long. But like, there's guys who we would see play at that level. Who's the guy who plays for Heidenheim now? Tim Kleindienst. He used to
Oh
play
yeah.
up front for Heidenheim in the Bundesliga, and he used to play against Babelsberg when he was 18 because he was playing in the men's league as a kid, and it was the fourth division, but people cared. You cared if Babelsberg won, you know? It wasn't it was competitive football in front of a crowd, played with blokes, blah, blah, blah. And this is why the German system has everybody integrated all the way down. So I think in Germany, they can't go higher than the third tier. Third tier is pretty good. Like, it'd be as good as the championship in Scotland.
For a
So,
country as big as Germany and how many clubs they've got. Yeah, the third tier is
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, you're talking about the fourth tier there to give context to anyone listening. That would be like probably no far. Like fourth tier players in Germany could probably get a good contract in Scotland. Some of them, if they fancied it.
Well, yeah. I
Um,
mean, Anders Schärler played for us, who had previously played for Babelsberg. He was our best player, striker, and he had played for Dundee United like a season before. So, like, he
Yeah.
wasn't terrible. Like, he'd gone from the fringes of a SPFL team to like the best player
main
on a
guy.
fourth division German team. So, work that out. I watched the A League, right? So, the A League is pretty bad compared to, there would be like lower end of the SPFL. So I like to judge all these against each other. But the point being, anyway, sidetrack through my lovely years of watching foreign football. But the point is that because you play, it's not so much the level that you play at, it's how invested teams are in winning, whether you play in front of a crowd and whether it's competitive football, basically, like against blokes. And obviously, the fifth tier of Scottish football doesn't really fit that because no one cares if the B team wins. You're not really playing in front of any sort of crowd. Even if you were up in the third tier of Scottish football, when you start to play against teams like who actually, I can't even remember who's in the third tier off the top of my head, Montrose or somebody like that, Cowdenbeath, whatever. Like my guess at who's currently where in the pyramid. But like once you get up to the Scottish League One, Scottish Championship, you are playing against teams who are their own fan bases with people who only support that team. There'll be a couple of thousand people there, and it'll be guys who like their job is playing football. Their job isn't
They want their win
working in
bonus.
the civil. Yeah, they want their win bonus. Their job isn't working in the civil service and playing for the civil service football team. Sure, that's not how it works, but like all they do is play football, and that's like what like everyone who played for Babelsberg and everyone who plays for like I don't know. I'm trying to think who plays in the second Dutch division, Volendam, Sparta, Excelsior, one of these teams. They're professional footballers. Like, and that's the important bit. You're playing professional matches against professional opponents, and we don't really get that. And for us, like, I'm a big fan of the B team concept in general, and I think people who say, "Oh, it doesn't work now, so get rid of it," kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater. You're throwing out the good idea because it doesn't work in its current form, or the current form isn't the way it's meant to work. But the way that we are forced to act because of the rules in the Champions League is exactly what you were saying. We are basically now we're giving minutes to guys who are 24, 25 because we don't have anyone else. When actually the way that we should work the system is that anybody you register under the age of 22 doesn't count, and we should basically never play anybody over the age of 22 who isn't of the Callum McGregor, Greg. I mean, you could even argue that, but
Best 11
guys
caliber.
the guys who would play in our team in the SPFL. So, like, of the team, the guys who played, let me get my list of who played this year. If you look at the ones who played this year, you would say McGregor, yeah, fine. Forrest, pretty much, yeah, fine. Welsh, yeah, debatable. And like Ralston, second right back, who cares? But like beyond that, someone like Turnbull, we should have been going. If he wasn't Scottish, he wouldn't still be playing for us. I don't think. I think he'd left a long time ago. Same again for Scott Bain. Like these guys, if they're not Scottish, they're not in the squad. Like we would have upgraded Turnbull 2 years ago if he wasn't Scottish. Like, and we would have had somebody else. If Matt O'Reilly, who ironically will get us more money because he's homegrown qualified for England, we have to send to them because he counts as one of their people. Like, if we didn't have this rule, we would have just signed Matt O'Reilly 2 years ago, probably. Like, this is how dumb the rule is. Like, someone who's playing internationally for Denmark doesn't count for us, but does count for England because he was at Fulham. I think Mr. Dembele counts for England as well. Like, so if you're England, you go and sign all these guys at 17. It doesn't matter if they ever play for you because they'll come back at some point and they'll still be home qualified. So anyway, I hope the court kicks that stupid rule out tonight because it literally just. I think it was Royal Antwerp who brought it to the court because they were like, Belgium are getting killed by this as well. And if Belgium, who produce between them and Croatia, I would say the most footballers per person of anywhere in Europe. Like the national team is so much better than a country of its size should be, and all the Belgian clubs are the same, and yet we somehow can't meet these stupid rules despite producing so many players. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway,
part of the problem the Belgians have, but which is a problem we would probably maybe like to have, is it's very easy for them to bring players in from all corners of the world to play in Belgium, and that league is like it's like it's like a scouts league, like every club has a few guys that get scouted, and everyone, in those leagues. And again, we should be loaning guys. Like we're going to come on to some of the recruitment now, I think, because we're kind of moving into that territory. And it's January is nigh, and it feels like that's definitely the topic of conversation. It's on most Celtic fans' lips at the moment. Rogers has hinted at 3 or 4 signings. We've mentioned already, kind of what we feel is missing in it in terms of a little bit of homegrown strategy, but clearly actual first team experience is really missing in the current squad from what we had in the last couple of seasons, So we've got a little list of players here to kind of start this little part of the podcast off, right? So since Mark Lawwell joined the club, these are the players that have came in. This is the list I've got. Moritz Jens, loan to buy, loan terminated halfway through the season. I was a big fan of
the YouTube.
I was a big fan of Mercedes Jens.
I'm going to give you the chirp or burp on these guys.
I was a big fan of Mercedes Jens, to be honest with you. But yeah, loan cancelled. We had too many centre backs. We signed Kobayashi and whatever else. We'll come to that. Haksabanovic, loan with option to buy. We buy him and then we loan him out. Abelgard, loan with option to buy. Loan cancelled after 6 months. Yuki Kobayashi, I think that was a straight purchase. And now we're looking to kick him back. Alistair Johnson, maybe a free agent. Was definitely obviously a permanent signing.
No. He came from
couple of quid, Montreal.
Oh yeah, Montreal. Montreal.
And
we
then
paid money for him though.
Tomoki Iwata, loan with option to buy, option exercised. I always forget his full name, sorry. But purchase, we just bought him. We just bought him, didn't we? We didn't loan him and buy him. I think we bought him straight, didn't we?
Yeah, we just bought him straight out, yeah.
Marco Tilio, Odin Thiago Home, both purchased straight out. Yang purchased. Kwon purchased. Gustav Lager BLK. Luis Palma purchased. Naroki purchased. Phillips, 6-month loan due to expire. And Bernardo, a full season loan with an option to buy. And we don't really know how that's going to shake out. 15 players in. And how many out of that list do we ever actually?
I don't know how many I chirped or burped there, but I reckon I'm going to count them out. I'll give you an AJ.
Good. AJ and Iwata, with your thumbs up for sure.
Iwata, yeah. I maintain home. I like home. I've got to stick up for Tilio, my Aussie brethren. Yang, I'm not as down on Yang as other people are, but yeah, it doesn't look great at the moment. Lagerbielke, same, kind of not as down as other people. Palma, I'd say good, 7. Naroki's not really played, 8. So that's 50% if you're being generous and you're saying Yang and Tilio and Palma. Yeah, I'd say a third unqualified good. 2 or 3 jury out. Oh God, Barkas' face is in front of me there. Get that away. And yeah, then at least half duds. I'm not sure about Bernardo as well, but I don't know why we signed him. So
yeah, I don't get it either.
So I've done my own analysis on this, and this is listeners. We do have a running order, but I hadn't seen it. This is just what I do for fun. So I tried to do this in a different grouping, right? In which I tried to group how I think our wage structure works, because there's something that I feel like hasn't been mentioned in terms of not so much Mark Lawwell, but in terms of the general architecture of how Mark Lawwell is forced to work, right? What is less sexy than signing players? Extending the players that you... Well, yeah, that's true. Extending the players that you already have, right?
Yep.
That is one day's traffic on social media, whereas signing Kwon is 2 weeks of who is this guy? Let's watch his videos on YouTube. We all know who Rio Atati is. So, how many player extensions? After I didn't know this, but I've got it in front of me. How many player extensions have we made since the start of or the end of last season?
5.
Have to recap. Abada, CCV, Hatate,
Oh,
Kyogo, Maida, O'Reilly.
Ooh, 6. I forgot
I'm
about
not
CCV.
including Scott Bain.
Fair.
But Scott. But so 6 of our best players, guys who you would say pretty unquestionably play in the first 11. In fact, maybe Cal McGregor. And I'm
Ralston.
also getting.
Ralston and McGregor have had contracts as well.
So there you go. So that is, if you were to take, let's imagine that we have a 20-man. What's it? Is it 25 the Premier League squads? We've got a 25 squad, right?
Yep.
So a third of that within a year. Now,
Yep.
we obviously have a wage cap that we do not go above, but the single biggest factor in where a football team finishes in the league is how much wages they pay, not how much transfers they pay, how much wages they pay. And what we have done, we have taken guys like Hatate, Maida, probably Kyogo, definitely O'Reilly, definitely Abada, and we've said, you've all performed for us in the league. We've won the league.
Abada
What we
hasn't,
want
by
to
the
do
way.
to move.
Has Abada signed a deal this summer? I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He definitely did.
Did he?
Definitely did.
Okay.
Long 5 years. I don't know why I should Google that. I Googled it today.
Yeah.
He's on my list. So what we have done, which is, I would say, massively important, but it's the opposite of sexy. Like but the fact that people who are highly engaged with this, can't remember who we have extended suggests that nobody cares, right? If you ask 10 punters at Celtic Park, like, how long is Riata's contract? They go, I don't know. And you're like, well, he just signed a new one, right? And what we've done is we clearly have, instead of moving the wage cap up with revenue, we have said we're going to get more of the players to the wage cap. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So imagine Scott Brown was on 40 grand a week, right? And he was like our best paid player.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than breaking that wage cap to pay somebody 50 grand a week, they said what we're actually going to do with all this excess money is that we're going to make more of our players 40 grand players, which theoretically, I'm using 40 grand as an example. I don't know what they're actually on. Theoretically, by playing these players more, we should be able to keep them for longer, which increases team cohesion, which is, I would say, the second most important thing is having the same team. When we play Champions League year on year, having the same 11 players year on year or close to it is how you get better, right? And this year we haven't had it. Maida got injured, Jota left, Kyogo, CCV, all these guys. A huge problem with that Champions League campaign, especially at the start, was guys just weren't playing who are our best players. So we have gone out of our way to extend these guys so that going into next year, we can go to that transfer window in the summer and the ball is entirely in our court of who we sell, because everybody is on a long-term deal.
Yep.
So charging more money. Now, everyone will go, oh, Celtic won't even spend the money anyway. But I would imagine if you look at next year's accounts, you will see the staff cost go up, because the staff cost is how much we pay our players, and we are now paying more players more money, which means they stay at the club for longer. They're on long-term contract. If somebody wants to get them out, they're going to pay a premium for it, which wasn't always the case previously, which is why you ended up with Eddie walking out for half of what he was worth, because he was going into his last year, Christopher Hire. So they're basically future-proofed against that. So the question will be, now that we have too many players, and I've actually included, so I've done a little wage tier here, right? So I've got 13 players in the top tier, 10 in the second tier, and 7 in the third tier, plus Phillips and Bernardo on loan, right? Who we don't know. But in the top tier, which I think is our best paid players, you've got McCarthy and Forrest, because they will have been on. I can't imagine they were not on very good deals when they signed. So you can immediately say that they're going to leave. You've got Joe Hart as well, whose contract's up at the end of the year. So there is scope in the existing wage structure before we've added any revenue to add basically at least 2, of our highest wage bracket players, just
Mhm.
based on McCarthy and Hart leaving. So one of them you assume would just be another goalkeeper, but we're getting a James McCarthy wage
Yeah.
of a player that we could go and sign. And in terms of I know this is very, bear with me, I promise it's interesting. But the way that wages work, as everybody knows from watching Chelsea, fees get amortization. They get spread across years, and in terms of how they count against your budget. So if you're doing the budget, things like wage costs and transfer fees aren't exactly linked in how much they cost you in the here and now.
Yep.
And so what I think they're doing, and this is what I said, I'm going to sound like an apologist for the board, right? What I think they're doing is saying, we think we can win this league, debatable at the moment, and in doing so, we will solidify winning the next 4 leagues or 3 leagues, because it will be so difficult to get our players out of the club that they'll either stay, like someone like Kyogo, for example, they'll just stay, or it'll cost loads of money. So this is what I think they're trying to do. And I feel like it's not been massively discussed, because it's very boring. But if you look at how clubs work across, you know, when we do things, because, for example, I realize having listened back to our podcast, I mention rugby league fucking constantly, right? But this is my day to day, right? In rugby league, especially in Australia, which is the best league in the world, there is no transfer fees. You can't just go and
Buy a
sign. You
player.
can't go to
Yeah.
another team and buy a player. You can do it. You can buy a player from the English league, but they never do it, because they can just what they do is they wait until the end of the contract. And actually now, as of November the 1st, you can sign players to 2025. So if you have 1 year left on your deal, you're free to talk to other clubs, and then you can sign for them. But you don't sign for them for next year unless your current club says
We
you
can
can
sell
go.
you. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, our equivalent of who's the one of the best paid players in the league is about to go from the champions to the bottom team in the league, because there's a salary cap, so they can't pay him the same money, but it won't happen until 2025. Jerome Luai for all the not the Samoan, for all the rugby league fans. But basically, the way that this works is it's much more important to extend the players that you have than it is to go and get a new player, because
Yeah.
everybody is trying to keep hold of their guys and poach other guys to fill the gaps in their team, knowing that you can't always have the best. So with that mindset, if you look at the Celtic squad, we've had a great window, because you've just got all the guys who previously would have walked out for nothing have been kept on very long-term deals, raising the wage cap. Now, everybody will tell you who knows about these things that wages matter more than transfer fees. And our problem is that we've basically cluttered, to go back to the 17 foreign players bit, we have cluttered that 17 with crap, like
Yeah.
with bad players. And what we would have been better doing was, instead of getting, like, imagine, obviously, we didn't expect Starfelt to leave, because Starfelt would have been part of this. But instead of getting one player to replace Starfelt and having Welsh, we've now got, and for example, we now got Scales, Lagerbielke, Naroki, Phillips, and CCV, which is too many
Yep.
players. So we have this in other areas, wingers, for example. Like, we went out and got Yang, Tilio. We should have got one player for the price of two. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, we should have combined the money on those two and gone and bought one. And then we should have had Rocco Batter as the other guy. And this is how this should work. We should have, like, the best guy, preferably two of them. So imagine we have, just to use wingers as an example, like strikers. There you go. Strikers is a brilliant example, because we have one
I
guy
think
who's clearly the best guy, one guy is clearly the second best guy, and then we should have a youth team player. That's how it should work in every position, with
yeah.
with a pretty clear hierarchy. And the problem is that we don't have that in some areas, like left back, for example, and we have a surfeit of it in other areas where we've gone and bought two guys at 2 million, one or 3 million, rather than one guy at 6 million. And I don't really understand how they've ended up in this situation, because it makes them look cheap, but it isn't cheap.
Yeah.
I think they might, instead of saying happy birthday 4 times a day, what they should say is they should just keep re-announcing contracts. just to remind people, Rio Tati's had a really good contract that we gave him that you've all
Yeah.
forgot about. Anyway,
I was really happy with that kind of side of the business, in terms of the renewals. I felt initially it was a bit of Ange proofing because he signed 2 players from Yokohama, and I've got a fair feeling he'll probably try and sign one guy from Celtic at some point. But again, similar to when he did sign Iwata and Maeda for us, they weren't rapid, kind of left his old team away for a wee while, let them still charge on, didn't want to disrupt them or anything too much. Like Kyogo was the first signing, he came from Vissel Kobe. And then Hatate came from Kawasaki. These teams were competitors to Yokohama. So Ange, I thought they were Ange proofing. I think Ange will probably come back for one of them. And I thought all those contracts get big minimum fees on them, like you're talking about. Maybe try and keep a few of them for longer than we normally do, and kind of try and build the squad around there. Sorry, on you go.
well, I was going to say, who's he coming back for?
Dyson or Kyogo probably for me. One of them.
Dyson, mate. I mean, I'm not wearing my Dyson jersey today, but I think Kyogo's too old. I think I would. So if I was him, I think the
Kyogo's
player
better at
profile.
finishing, And I think like Ange will
Yeah,
take one of them as a super sub. Like I don't think he'll take one of them as a starter, but see for the 75-minute substitution that he loves, or the 60th minute substitution that he loves.
yeah.
I think he wants a bit of mega press, in that Tottenham team, and I think Ange would be happy to give us a big wad of money as well. I think Ange would quite happily tell
I don't
Daniel
think
Levy to spend a few quid. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm not sure Daniel Levy would, but so I kind of I understand completely your point, right? But I think more my thinking would be that the gap between Celtic and Tottenham is too big. Like if he'd gone to Aston Villa, I mean that's bad because they're third in the league. If he'd gone to Everton, like he could have signed Rio Tai and he'd be Rio Tai would play centre midfield every week. Whereas, and I think just Kyogo's too old. Well, I don't know. Premier League players tend to
I don't know, mate.
they're the end point.
I think if Ange actually rates them, like, see, you will know for real if Ange really rates any of the Celtic players, because I think he would go and get them. If you look at the goalkeeper he signed, that guy was playing for Empoli, a bottom 4, bottom 5 team in Italy. And we are signing on Ange's request, because he was in a relegation fight, in Yang, because of I think we've been kind of referencing in other ways with the appearances, but he's seen signs of maturity or good experiences early in their career that would maybe signal that they could do better in that respect. So I don't think Ange. I don't think he would look down on the Scottish League. I think if he does want a Celtic player, if he believes they're good
Oh
enough,
no,
then
hundred
I
percent.
think he'll come for them. But if he doesn't believe they're good enough, then of course he won't. But I thought, yeah, it was a bit of Ange proofing. Put big minimum fees, put Premier League minimum fees on the contracts for them, and I think all the guys would have been happy to sign it, thinking, oh well, at least I know if somebody comes in, I can get my move. Celtic won't stand in my way.
If
Everyone's a
if
winner.
yeah yeah if they have any sense, I think. Well, this is what went wrong with Dembele, right? Was that he basically
Yeah.
said this and then didn't do it. But I think every player knows that they've got a prize, and I think when you've done that, like obviously this is where I in my day job when I deal with teams that I don't support, it's very easy to rationalize all this, and then I just think rational head says this is what they're doing with Celtic, and then not rational heart says you've watched this team not spend any money for 20 however many years, and this
Too
is what they'll
fucking
do.
long.
But too fucking long, the old biscuit tin. So I think we are a little bit selective memory on when they do stuff like this because I mean, again, not to labour the point, but like wages correlate to league position table far better than transfer fees, and some of the best players we've ever got, we got for nothing. Some of the worst players we've ever got, we got for lots, as you
Yep.
can see across all of football. So I'm less bothered about let's go and sign somebody for 2 million because Rio Tati cost 2 million, right? If even
Yeah,
that.
something like that.
So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
or I mean, what the famous Henrik Larsson cost whatever 700 grand, but like we what we have done is that we have signed. I'm more concerned when I see these players and go like, this isn't. We can only carry so many age profile players, and we only ever play these players in certain positions. So I can see why you might sign a Tilio and a Yang because we like a young winger, and young wingers you can put them in the team, you can take them out of the team. If you go and sign Odin Holm, who we Like, he never plays because you always want your 3 best centre midfielders always there, and we are not in a
Yep.
situation where we are gonna throw in the 20-year-old because what if it goes wrong? Because as we've seen this week, like, Pet hates obviously, as I said, as a Celtic supporter, if Celtic lose, I don't consume anything, right? Makes it very annoying to use social media because everybody else, you just see everybody else's, you know, shit in the bed. But like, I look at it and go, okay, this is bad. We've been playing badly for about a month. Season is 10 months long, and you try and rationalize it out and go, this is us playing. Here are all the mitigating factors. But if you lose once, it's the end of the world. We get booed off at home for draws. Like, so the
Yep.
mentality that works week to week does not really vibe with here's a long term plan that works across 5 years. And I wrote a piece many years ago, based for Celtic actually, where basically saying like, if you're Ajax, you'll say it doesn't matter if Feyenoord win one season because we'll win 9 out of 10. Right, and that doesn't work for Celtic. Never. We do not think like that at all. If we thought like that, we look at the season that we didn't win and go, but we won 12 out of 13 or whatever we're on now. So in the long term, when you look back over the last since 2000, we grind Rangers into the dirt, but that doesn't matter if they won at the weekend and we drew or lost. So do you see the job of the board and of a director of football is to not think like that. That's why you have a manager. And I
Yep.
feel like obviously we're supporters, and as supporters, we try and it isn't our job to do this, but my purpose of this week was to think, what if it was my job to do this? What would I be saying to myself? And I think Brendan Rodgers, in terms of what he's said, like he does not need more 20-year-olds. He doesn't need more Holden Holmes. He needs more Lewis Palmers, or he
Yep.
needs more 25-year-olds, and he needs them to play specific positions because I think we're only really a few positions away. So I think if you're Brendan Rodgers, right, and you can listen to him talk about this, like he will be saying to the board, like, we need more better older players who are higher on the wage scale. And if we look at where the wage tiers are, so I've made these stupid wage tiers here, right? And I've got like the bottom tier is Scales, Segrist, Bain, Tilio, Bernabe, Quan, Yang. 8 guys who basically, I mean, Scales aside, who's in the team and has done well to stay there, but how many minutes have those guys got? Tilio, basically nothing. Bernabe, basically nothing. Quan, nothing at all. Yang, in and out. Segrist, 0. We've got all these dudes who do not play, who do get a wage, and look, that's what I've just counted there. 7 names. That should be 3 names.
Yeah.
And we should have all that money, 4 wages worth, should be being paid higher up the food chain. And you look at how many players does Guardiola have in his squad? Like, really not that many. And if somebody he will keep a squad of 22, and if anybody gets injured outside it, he goes straight into the youth team, and you end up with Rico Lewis or what was Mika
Oscar
Hamilton or
Bob.
somebody like that.
Yeah.
Oscar Bob, that sounds like a name from sort of like he should have been a chimney sweep in Bolton in about 1930. Oh, my name's Oscar Bob. But that's my Fred Didner impression there. Just keep my references as topical as possible for the kids.
I love it.
Ask your granddad. So we basically are very inefficient at this. And if the situation was, imagine a world in which we have 33 first team players, right, but 5 of them are on loan in the SPFL or at a decent level. If Holm was playing for Hibs and if Lagerbielke was playing for Kilmarnock or whatever, and then we said, oh shit, we've just had 5 centre backs injured. We have to play, Mitchell Frame at left back. People go, okay, I understand the situation by which this kid is now playing left back because we are like, it's not a hard sell to say on the off chance that all 4 of our wingers are injured and Rocco Batta has to play. Like, that's fine because all these guys are injured and, Tilio is currently playing for Kilmarnock. Like, I think that's a much easier sell. And that's, Manchester City do that.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, their second team is better than our second team, but like, the guy that we wanted to sign, Borges, who'd never played a minute of senior football, goes to Ajax. Like, we were happy to sign that guy, and we were like, brilliant, we got this guy from Man City. It's like, well, yeah, he's never played a minute of senior football. Whereas, if you want
Yeah.
guys to come into the team and perform well, it probably helps for them to have played even in the Israeli league or the Korean league or whatever to have actually played proper football before. I feel like I'm bringing back to this point, but we have there's a way that you could have this arrangement and sell it to the Celtic support, and it wouldn't be a problem. Like that's how Frimpong got a game, and that's how Cal McGregor got a game, and that's how Kieran Tierney got a game, and they're the best three players who've come through the club.
Yeah. So I think like looking at the Mark Lawwell signings again, Jens, Haxa, Abelgard, UK, Alistair Johnson, Iwata, O, Home, Telio, Yang, Kwon, Lager, BLK, Palma, Naroki, Phillips, Bernardo. There's not that many of them that kind of a lot of them initially were kind of loan to buys, and I don't think many of them are going to be really that near that top tier bracket that we're talking about there. So, like in
Mm.
terms of the recruitment from the club, like I remember when this guy got appointed, and it was he's been at Yokohama, he's in with the CFG, and his specialty is South America. And when I read that list out, I'm not going to read it again, but there's no one in that list from South America. Bernabé came in before this guy, according to the information in front of me today. So and a lot of these guys, like Haxa and Abelgard, are at the same club in Russia. You've then got like the likes of Home, Lager BLK. I'd even put Naroki and Palma into this category of playing in like tier 4 European leagues, tier 3 European leagues, where we are kind of bargain basement shopping for the most part, like Poland, Sweden, Norway, these types of places. So I think in the summer, like the sort of profile we're discussing, somebody we need like a Kyogo, right? We buy Kyogo. He is a J League winner at that point. He's hit some golden boots. He's in the prime of his powers. And when Ange's made us sign him, he's went to the club. This guy is the best striker in that league. You know what you're going to get when you buy him. And I don't think any of us have really regretted Kyogo coming. I think everyone really likes Kyogo and loves it. And that's the kind of caliber of signing we need to go and get. Now, based on where we've done the shopping already, I don't think we're going to go into the J League, and especially now, I think the J League have had their pants pulled down for long enough, and they've got some better contracts on their
Yeah.
players, and they're probably going to try and start charging some real fees all of a sudden. So I don't think you're going to be able to pull that trick again. But I don't see us getting a Kyogo type guy from Argentina, from Brazil, from MLS, from Mexico. Those guys will cost 15 million at least, the Kyogo equivalent in those divisions. And like we've already referenced, as much as I'm going to pray that it happens, Celtic are not going to be spending 15 million quid on a guy from Argentina or South America or even Asia for that matter. It's just not going to happen. They would rather spend it on 4 guys, unfortunately. But I feel that the club is a little bit of breaking point between the board and the manager. I've made a video, it'll be out in a couple of days, maybe on the channel, kind of looking at a lot of the messaging that we've had coming out from the board and from the manager. And like Brendan is vehemently saying we need quality, we need experience, power, pace, all that stuff we've referenced already. And unless he's going to be going out and picking them, I'm not too sure that's what we're going to see coming in January. In terms of what we could get in January, Meehall, based on the kind of state of play that we've had, I know we're going to have some outgoings, maybe some loans and whatever. I don't know if we're going to really receive any transfer fees. What do we think about January? Does Brendan get his whole way and nothing but his whole way, or do we get a bit of meet in the middle between him and the Mark Lawwell strategy that we've laid out before us?
Well, I think we definitely will get a left back. I can see I, the most obvious place in which you can say to him, "Here is your upgrade," and also get some. I hate the phrase "pay some power," but get some athleticism into the team is it means the same thing, I know. But
Yeah, yeah.
get that into the team is left back because Greg Taylor is not athletic. Like I don't want to sound like Gordon Strachan here, but like a lot of the Scottish guys we have are not very athletic. But you know, if you have if the purpose is to improve your first team by making the guy who's currently first second, then
Yeah.
you can definitely improve that. That's off the bat can be done very, very quickly. I would like the next to be a goalkeeper. I don't think that will happen. I think he'll say Joe Hart's. He is. Whilst I don't think he's been great this season and has been declining for a long time, in terms of experience, age, blah blah blah, kudos in the dressing room, all that sort of stuff. Like he is among our best players, and like you have to respect that. Every footballer will say this guy's great, and he's not so bad. He's not like you couldn't play him so bad. Like he's
Yeah.
decent enough. Um, definitely can play in the SPFL. Yeah, it's interesting though because I think if you look at I know I bang on about this, but like the guys who haven't played, like Nawrocki, like Abada, like if those guys come back, then suddenly it's a real difficult team to get into
I agree.
because of. So suddenly you're
So
going,
do we
okay,
say
so we've then.
Yuki's away, Bernabeu will be away, Lagerbielke will be away by all accounts as well.
I think yeah. The Stephen McGowan said that, and he's not normally wrong. Oh, Gucci was there. I think he's already gone. I think Bernardo. Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, he strikes me as a player that Brendan Rodgers likes, but nobody else does. I think Turnbull will go as well
Yeah, Mikey
because
J
here's McCarthy,
out of
Brad
contract in the
James,
summer. Yeah.
beautiful.
This is the
Um,
meaningful squad-ish, isn't it? Guys that are in contract. Seagrist, I think, is he out of no? Is Seagrist out of contract? No, it's
see,
Hart. Sorry, Hart's
have
out
I
of
have I
contract.
told you have you told you the Seagrist scoop? I don't know if it's a
The
scoop.
Seagrist what?
He's
No,
so. Do you know about Seagrist's girlfriend?
I think she's in Australia or something. That's all I know.
She's a radio host here, and he met her on
Ah,
like some elite, on like a Tinder, but for only for rich people.
yeah.
And they're like super loved up. So I think he's going to move to the A League, but I think he would like to move to the A League, but no A League club because of the way that the rules work here. You basically don't want a foreign goalkeeper; it's pointless. Like
Aye.
he would be better, even if he was better than the guy you could get. Like why would you? You've got limited foreign players you can have, so why would you waste one on a goalkeeper?
Yep.
But yeah, I think he would. If he could get out and get a move to the A League, he would definitely be doing that. I think. Um, so yeah, looking at this, like looking at what you've got there, the scope to sign another midfielder.
Yeah, totally.
Bernardo's going to leave. Turnbull's going to leave. Unless I think they would
It just
re-sign
feels like
Turnbull
this
just
zone
to.
here, seeing most matches, it just feels like we can't get anything going in here ever. It just feels like
Yeah.
everything's like around us, kind of zone somehow,
So
where we don't have anyone that will go in here and invade.
yeah, my theory on that is that's Hatate's best
Of
area,
course.
that left sort of half space, and he
Yep.
hasn't played. And I think when McGregor played there, we did look better just because he's naturally that's where he would play if he's not playing in the six. And I think I don't. I mean, you would know this better than me, but to me, it seemed like Tomoki covered more ground, and that allowed McGregor to go and play there without having to
Yep.
be as like he is quite slow. But at home,
Yep.
when we have all the ball, it doesn't really matter that much. But when Tomoki played, it was like, Callum, you just go and attack. Don't worry about it. Um, in a way that O'Reilly does on the other side.
Yep.
So yeah, I think in an ideal world, you would either go and sign somebody to compete with Rio Hatate, and then you've got McGregor and Tomoki in the six, or you would say, okay, look, looking at it here, we've got 5 players there, and ideally, and there's 3 positions, so ideally you'd want a sixth, and I think it would be interesting to see what that sixth looks like, not the position, the sixth, what that sixth player looks like,
Hmm.
and what I would imagine it will look like is someone who's big, because we don't.
Yeah.
Hatate is fast, but he's not big. O'Reilly is big, but he's not fast. Conor
I
McGregor
think
is
that's probably
neither.
the thinking behind Bernardo, because he is kind of big. He's a bigger guy, and he was meant to be. He's tried to
I
fill
reckon
that
he's one
gap
of
for the
these
Tati.
dudes. Yeah, I reckon he's one of these dudes that if you saw him, you'd be surprised how big he is.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of an anti CCV, where you think CCV is massive, but if you actually look at, I
I
looked
thought
it
he
up
is.
and he would be, yeah, I think he is the size of Nathan Cleary, who is the best rugby league player in the world, and boyfriend of, speaking of celebrity spouses, of Mary Fowler, who plays for Man City Women and Australia
Oh, there
Women.
you go. I didn't know that. There you go.
But there you go. But he's like, so that's a small-ish rugby league player, and CCV is the same size as him. So if you look at, this is how I measure everybody, but in terms of like, he's not a 6'4" brick shithouse like Lagerbielke is, or
Nah.
like Naraki. Like he's not. He's way shorter than that. No, I mean, I think it's overrated in terms of centre backs generally because he's obviously our best centre back. But yeah,
It
I
will stop
think
him getting into the
if you
Prem
look at,
probably, but
well, perfect, stay in Celtic.
yeah, exactly.
But if you look at, I mentioned this last week, but like what Yves Basuma is like his physical characteristics compared to, in fact, a better example, Vinny Souza, who plays for Sheffield
Mm.
United, with whom we were heavily linked. And I thought, this guy looks brilliant, but he'll never play because we don't need him against Dundee. Like, someone like that would probably get into a Brendan Rodgers team. Brendan Rodgers would pick that player and then say, Callum McGregor, you play further forward. And they kind of, I know people wax lyrical about Wanyama, right? But Wanyama in this team wouldn't be any good. He doesn't play the ball fast enough. Well, I mean, he was
No.
the guy was going to play in the Champions League final, but that characteristic. But someone who was both big and could play the ball fast and get rid of it, I think would get a game in a Brendan Rodgers team. And I think there is a lot of the problems we have with pace when you don't have Maida and Abada in the team. Like, they're both
Yep.
fast players. So I think that's the team will instantly look faster when those players return to it. And for all of their fault, like, you can say like about Maida, Abada in other ways, but they're both fast. Like, even if Abada is tiny, but he is rapid. And I think at the moment, it's very easy to mark Kyogo at the team because those two guys aren't there. And you know that Palmer isn't going to go beyond. And you can be pretty confident that Mikey Johnson isn't going to go beyond, which means that you can just, if you're the defence, you can just get around the one guy you're scared of without basically knowing that unless Palmer whacks him from 25 yards, he's not going to do it. Why do you stand on the Palmer is your extra midfielder? Because
I would take
this happened
Palma as a
already,
midfielder
I know.
because I would take Palma as a midfielder because I've been quite strong in saying he's definitely not a winger. I really don't see him as a number. As soon as we signed him, I didn't really know much about him, right? And I can be quite bad for thinking if I've never heard of him, then I'm worried. That's kind of my gut reaction for how deep I've been in football over the last 5 years, and that was the case with Palma, Naroki, and Lagerbielke. But with Naroki, I actually don't mind him. Lagerbielke, I'm still kind of undecided. We'll see what happens with him in his career. But Palma, I still really don't get it. He clearly has artillery. Like, he's clearly got delivery. He can shoot, he can cross. Not too sure if he can play passes between lines and that kind of thing. I'm not too sure he's got that in him. So that's the only thing that would stop me from saying, yeah, let's get him in as a number 10 or let's try and bring him into the midfield fold somehow. Because but he seems like he's up for a bit of shoulder to shoulder. Like, I've seen him kind of, I can see him
Oh, he
doing
puts himself
okay in the
about.
midfield.
Like, I think he's
Yeah. He's not shy. He's not flimsy or he's not pulling out of stuff or not going into stuff. He does try, but he can't just step over and dribble and go by a guy. He's just not got that in him. Not many people do. That's why not many people are wingers. So
Do you
that's
think
kind of
if
when I
he
fall down
was
on him.
so here's a thought
If
for
I
you,
can say
right?
one thing, if I can just say one thing,
Go on.
I think part of the thing that you can get out of him being on the wide area is, as we know, he's very good at being out here. If you can get him on space, and he loves putting a ball into the box, right? See, if you watch a lot of our goals this season, which I've had to go back and recap for videos, a lot of our good goals in the games where we've dominated a team is balls from this kind of zone getting clipped over, and Kyogo will put it away, or O'Reilly will be breaking in from midfield and will put the
Back
ball
post,
away.
yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So having him over here, if the other winger is always somebody like Dyson or Abada, then that's a decent route to go if you're going to get runners like O'Reilly to support it or Hatate when he's fit and available. The only problem I have with this is it takes so much work to get Palma the time and space in this area of the pitch so that he can actually do this. This could take 10 minutes to build the team where you've got the front two, a midfielder in support, the defense is in the right position, and then you're going to work the ball left to right for 2 minutes to get him 5 yards of a radius so that he can pick the ball out. That can take, let's say, a real 10 minutes of match time to make one opportunity, maybe two happen. And
So
I
here's
just
my
find it quite
question for you,
limiting.
because my question ties into this, right?
Sure.
If you so I'm a big believer sort of what you're saying there, like having a sustainable route to goal. Like, if you watch an Anne's team, one of the most sustainable routes to goal was, I wish I had control over this.
Sure.
Was Greg Taylor into that half space and he puts the ball in behind for Maida, come off that wing and either shoot or cross it across or put it across for a cutback. So one
Yeah.
of Maida or Hatate would go further beyond, and the man who played the pass would be Taylor from that half space because he's come
Yeah.
in. Now, imagine that Lewis Palmer, you want him to be in that half space, right? And the way that it currently works, Taylor will he doesn't go down the wing, so he will always come into that space as well. But if you then replace Taylor with a left back who wants to go further and who can get up the line, then they bring that fullback with them, which then creates that space for Palmer. So it's a much easier way to get in that space without the 10-minute build up is
Fair.
having a left back who keeps going, because Taylor will never do that. And if you're, if you're the opposing right back, you're not scared. You were previously scared of Maida getting in behind you and knowing that Taylor was the man who would make that pass happen. Or Hatate, somebody in that left half space would get the ball through to somebody, and then it's a very simple cross. And if you remember last year, Harry Kewell, all he would say to Maida was, "Don't worry about putting shape on the ball, just flash it across the goal and
Mhm.
let Kyogo deal with it." And so many goals would come from a miscontrol that would drop to somebody, drop to Hatai or somebody following in, or just be an own goal or whatever. And the ball would end up in that area where one of our guys could get it. Sorry, listeners.
Yeah.
So I reckon if you put in an addition of not Johnson, but like a Johnston type fullback who wants to go around, you either get the ball down to that fullback, or you get it, or you create the space in that channel for that pass.
Yeah.
Where it's a lot easier for Pound to come inside if somebody is then taking the space on the outside, which currently they're never going to do because they know Taylor doesn't ever make that run, and if he does, he can't cross.
Yeah.
So, So I think if I was looking to immediately upgrade and get Palmer more space, that would be one of the ways that I would do it. And I agree with your point before about the wingers that we have. Like they work best when we have one who stays and one who goes.
Yeah.
So when last year that was Jota and Maida. Now Jota was a better player than Palmer, so he could go in behind and
Come
come back.
inside. Yeah.
But if you've got one who goes and one who stays, then that pass. If you look at I know all the analytics will tell you this, is that the most advantageous ways to cross the ball for a striker is either from the byline cutback, which we see constantly, and I think of it as like the Kevin De Bruyne position, which is that in towards the back post from that sort of Palmer area,
From
because then
here
you can
over
have
to the back
multiple
post.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it goes which way you put it on, whether you go in swing or out swinger. They're
Yeah.
just so difficult to defend because it's not straight and it's not across, and you're
Yeah.
basically turning the defenders towards their own goal whilst you've got to run on them. And if you look at how City or where all that Liverpool try and do at the moment with Trent Alexander-Arnold is get him into that space and aim
Yeah.
at Darwin Núñez or whoever else is there. Luis Diaz gets a load of them. Jota gets a load of them, and I think the other shitter Jota 2,
The fake one.
electric boogaloo, the fake Jota. Yeah. So I think there's what Palmer's issue now is that a lot of the time when he comes in, he's coming into where players already are. Like whether that's McGregor wants to move into that space or whether that's like nobody who plays there when Hatate doesn't play there wants to go beyond, and they don't. McGregor does it sometimes when he dribbles. I think he's an underrated dribbler, but then he's never going to dribble it and cross it. So he suddenly has to go, well, I'm here now, but what do I do? Whereas on the other side, like O'Reilly is really good at getting beyond the play because he's big enough that he can finish in the box, which McGregor just doesn't do that. So I think Hatate would do that. So I think
Yeah.
there is something in that idea, and I think having a better left back, just who gets up and down that line and actually can cross and dribble. The guy that we were linked with at Nantes, Meehall,
Yeah.
the left back, I watched a fair bit of him. You know, when they get linked with us, you start seeing them everywhere. I'm like, oh, I wonder how that guy went.
He's all right.
And he looked like the sort of guy that sort of archetype who would do it. I'm not sure. I haven't watched enough of him to tell you whether he'd be exceptional at it, but I see him and go, yeah, he looks like a sort of the kind of. I would imagine the French league is full of dudes like this. To be honest,
Oh yeah.
the sort of play that we lack is the sort they produce a lot of.
If we talk about minutes and stuff like that, Quinton Merlin's probably in his 5th or 6th season, first team at Nantes, a couple of Europa League campaigns under their belt. That is experience. That is definitely. And that's an interesting one because I forgot about that link. And Brendan, in one of the quotes I dug up earlier this season, someone asked him. It was over 2 press conferences. Someone asked him, "Did you get all the business you wanted in January?" And he responded, "No," straight. Like as soon as they stopped asking the question, kind of vibes. And then in a later press conference, they said something like, "Will you? Did you miss?" It was another question. It was like, "Did you miss out on any targets in the summer?" And his instant response is, "Maybe we'll see in January." So Quentin Merlin, that's maybe a name to re-remember and think about again, because that was one
The
we were
magic,
linked with.
the magic man. We've
Yeah.
gone too long since Tom Rogic left without any sort of magician jokes.
For
I
sure.
can definitely.
Probably the last thing
but
I
no,
oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to sort of say that sort of archetype. I think he likes Johnson for that. I think Johnson does that well, and I think you see better stuff. I don't think Johnson's the best player in the world, but at least in that aspect, like Brendan, that's much more like the Brendan Rodgers style of player, and I think it's a real block on our team when Taylor and Palmer, I don't think I've ever seen him running behind, and Taylor's best attribute is that pass, and he never gets to play it. Maybe when Maida was playing, obviously he does get to play it, but Maida, I think we've all seen now Maida's better on the right than on the left.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, on the left. We want Maida on the left, I think. I was going to say the last thing to kind of probably close this out is probably a Merry Christmas to everyone that's listening to this and a Happy New Year. Me and you, Meehall, we'll be back together for the Flagship podcast probably sooner rather than later. There is a derby match on the horizon. But before we even get to all that, we still have to dispense of the mighty Livingston as they come a knocking this weekend. We normally finish the podcast with some sort of score prediction. We're not really going to be previewing the game as such, but this has to be a drubbing, hasn't it? We have to get the team back on track.
This is at the Deep Pansero as well, right?
No.
It's at home.
It's our bit. I'll double check, but I'm sure it's
I mean, I always say, as I said last week, I always think we're going to win 3-1. So can I point this out? I know, we have such an influence on the higher ups at Celtic, right? Of all the things they can take out of this and how to run a football club, could you please stop putting the post-match interviews next to the videos on Celtic TV? Because it will say first half, second half, and then it'll be pictures of Brendan Rodgers' face from the post-match, and then it'll come up and say, a game has recently finished. Would you like to see spoilers? And then you click it, and then Brendan Rodgers' face disappears. So clearly, that is the spoiler. And so I then have to look at it, going, "Is that happy? Is that sad face that we lost? Is that sad we could have done better, but we won 6-0, as happened a couple of weeks ago?" So please, TV, sort that out. But I think this is another middle of the nighter for me. So I will be getting up and watching this on delay, which has not gone. Actually, no, I stayed up for the Kilmarnock game, and then I got up for the Hearts game and the final game. No, final game watched in delay. So I don't know, man. We'll win 3-1. We always win 3-1.
3-1. I'm going to go for 4-0. I'm going to hopefully we get that clean sheet, and maybe we get an RB goal while we're at it. Just a hope.
I really hope. I don't have any team advice like that. I don't think he'll run huge changes on the team, but I think we'll have seen the end of Mikey Johnson. I think that's. I don't know who's going to come in. Maida might come in. Maida played the weekend.
I think Maida will be back. I think for this one for sure.
And Maida Kyogo.
It's just really this spot here is the question. Does he play home? Does he go with Bernardo? Does he still play Turnbull?
Yeah, is Tamaki not back? Actually,
unknown. I really don't know what the state of his injury is. Maybe Iwata comes back and we get McGregor back in that role.
This is wild, by the way. I don't know if you use this, but there's a thing called News Now. So you put in, you go on newsnow.co.uk and you just put in Celtic, and it'll just give you aggregates. We're on it, Celtic here on it, but it aggregates all Celtic news from everywhere. So you just get 20 articles of. You get the same press conference 5 times over, right? But you basically get to see all the lines without having to give the Daily Record or the Mail a click.
Right.
I mean, click on Celtic here because we're on it. But as someone who goes to press conferences and speaks to coaches all the time, I would reckon a quarter of every press conference is injuries. Nobody ever asks who our injured players are. It should be. It's permanently on every NRL club's website who the injured players are. And if it's not up, I can ring up the media manager and go, "Is XYZ injured?" And they'll go, "Yes, no, I'll find out." And then you can ask them how long, and they'll tell you. Why is this so opaque? I don't understand. I wish please, Stephen McGowan or one of the other ones, Keith Jackson, probably not. One of them, please just tell me who's injured and for how long.
First question of every press conference: who's injured? Who's going to make the squad? That's what we want to know.
Well, no, seriously, I go in press conferences, and that will be like after every game. I mean, obviously, a lot more players get injured in rugby league than in football, but like they'll go, "Have you got any injuries?" And they go, "Yeah, you know, blah blah blah. It's got a sore knee, whatever. But we'll see how it. We'll have a scan, but we'll see what happens." But it's constant, and it's because they have our version of fantasy football is massive, and so everybody wants to know for their super coach team who's injured. And I'm like, we have fantasy football back home as well, but
Yeah,
apparently it doesn't
we
matter.
definitely do.
So,
That's it.
and you could ask, and you could ask.
Well,
Anyway,
until the
I will win
next
free
press
will.
conference when I get back in, 'cause that fantasy football reasons, I'm always asking those questions. Anyone that knows me will definitely know that.
Do you know
For
when
sure.
I do it here, I'm so snotty about it. I never ask about it because I think that's somebody else who ask that. I never
I do. I
ask.
waste a question. I get that. 'Cause you only get two normally
Yeah,
or something like that. But again, to anyone that's made it to this end of the podcast, Merry Christmas. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a great year. Meehall's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, won the hoops and hail, hail.
please make my early mornings better, Celtic, and then we can be happy talking next week because we're only 2 points behind. We need to get better. Merry Christmas, everybody. Hail, hail.